Hi, I'm Lucy Griffiths and I'm going to share how I grew a 100-gram business while still being a full-time mum. So how did I make £100,000 and still be a full-time mum? I'm going to share my tips and techniques in just one moment. Hi, so I'd love to share my strategies for being a full-time mum and still making 100,000 in profit. So how did I do it? Well, when I was on maternity leave, I knew that I didn't want to go back to my old role. So I worked as an international TV reporter, and it sounds glamorous, but actually there was a lot of traveling. It wasn't as well paid as you might imagine, and it was actually quite tough to juggle a family, and I'd seen from friends of mine who did similar work that it was nigh on impossible. So I made the decision that I didn't want to go back to my old life. I wanted to build a business that worked on my terms. But it was also incredibly challenging how to do that while also thinking I've got to bring in some money. So one night I was breastfeeding in the middle of the night, and I just happened to be looking at a property website, and lo and behold, there came this beautiful flat that looked gorgeous from the outside, but it was a total wreck inside, and it was up for sale at auction. And at the time I was away, and we couldn't attend the auction. Anyway, it didn't sell at auction. So fast forward another month and it was still there. The price had been reduced, and I decided to ring the auctioneers and go for it and put in a bid before the auction. Our bid was accepted, and we now had an amazing flat. But we really were, it was like, how are we going to pay for this? And so we had to, remortgage, scrimp and save. Luckily, some investment came in, and it all came together, which enabled us to buy and put down the deposit. So for the next year, I was on maternity leave, and I was, maternity leave was finishing, and I was like, oh gosh, I really don't want to go back to work. So I was determined to make it work. So I did as much as possible in renovating the house, and I would really, use Pinterest and get really creative with the boards to get these ideas and money saving tips, so you could, basically use IKEA shelving but turn it into something that looked much more fancy, or different tricks and techniques to help me. So, I scoured for much cheaper versions of products or tiles that were cheaper, and ends of lines and sales, so that basically I was able to save money as much as possible but still create a beautiful house. Did as much of the house as possible myself, and within a year we'd finished it, and I was able to then sell it and make over 100,000 in profit. That enabled me to then buy more property in different parts of the country and turn it into Airbnb properties, which again enabled me to grow an income stream while still being a full-time mum. So I could easily use the Airbnb app, and I could basically answer emails and deal with admin while breastfeeding, while being with my son. And then I would take my son along to do the meet and greet. So when you go and meet a guest in the property, I would take my son along, and he was, cute and adorable. And so it enabled me to still be a full-time mum, be around all the time, but build a really successful business. So whatever is going on in your life, and whatever your background and your experience, I went from being an international TV reporter to owning property. It was like a complete shift. You can do whatever you want, but you just have to put your mind to it. And when you go for it and put your mind to it, you can really do it. And once I had that leverage of my international background background, the TV background, but also the Airbnb business, I really started thinking online businesses, and that enabled me to grow an online video business, a second business, which, you know, I love working at, and it gives me much more fulfillment than kind of doing the admin for Airbnb. But, you know, I couldn't have done it if I hadn't have leveraged from the Airbnb business, because I wouldn't have had the funding to kind of kickstart and set myself up. And the Airbnb business enabled me to afford to pay for Facebook advertising and to grow an audience. So think about creatively how you can build your business. And in the beginning, you might not have the leverage. So you need to think, could you let out your driveway? Could you use Airbnb and let out a room? Things like that to enable you to grow a business despite not having the capital and the funding that you want in the beginning. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I would love you to subscribe.